Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. As you already know, we're back again. The cavalry is not coming. The creek has rose. The levee has given way. It's up to us to save us. It is time for us to bet on ourselves, tag somebody, let them know that we're back on the show. Thank you for being patient with us. Last week he wasn't here, but I'm sure you guys enjoyed the talk that we had about inflation with the Black Chamber of Commerce. Hey, listen, tonight we're going to have a special treat. We have one of the politicians in our own community that is going to be talking to us about home ownership, what we can do to help ourselves bet on ourselves in reference to home ownership. We have a great show tonight. So you need to tag somebody. You need to get somebody on the phone. Tell your girlfriends. Tell everybody. Sit them around the table as we go ready to host. She's going to teach us about what politics has to do with our community, what we need to do in our community to help us become more equipped to be able to have financial generational success in our own community. Once again, I'll say it again. It's up to us to save us. The cavalry is not coming. The creek has rose. The levee has given way. It's up to us. So without any further ado, we're going to have, I met this young lady at a wedding reception, and I was impressed with the way she conducted herself. And she said, hey, I'm also involved in home ownership in a whole nother city. And I was like, okay. And she said she began to talk about what she do. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We got one of our own running for office. Let's keep it a secret. We got one of our own running for office. So the cavalry is not coming. The creek is rose. The levee has given way. It's up to us to save us. Let's welcome TAMIE DIXON TATUM to the show tonight. So without any further ado, TAMIE, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the show of Generational Wealth Wednesdays, where everything is about betting on yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself, TAMIE.
Well, thank you, first of all, very much for having me a part of the show. And it was a pleasure meeting you at the wedding reception, and definitely a pleasure to be a part of your show. So, I guess just to give us a little quick snapshot of who I am. I am from Anderson, Indiana, born and raised in Anderson. And you also mentioned politics. So, I've been a part of politics for about 32 years. My father is a city councilman here.
All
But
right.
besides that, I have a master's in public administration. I have a master's in legal studies. I have a bachelor's in telecommunications. And before too long, I should have a PhD here in law. I should say JD here in law.
All right, all right.
So
So hold
I'll
on,
be
hold on,
working on
hold on,
that.
Tammy. Hold on, Tammy. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, so she's saying that she got all these credentials. See, that don't happen in our community, So we gotta, the last hired, the first fired. So now we're changing the script. So we're the first hired and not the first fired. So we got somebody who's qualified to talk about what we're getting ready to talk about tonight. So keep on going, Tammy. Go keep on going.
Right.
PhD Tammy.
Well, I was going to
PhD.
say I should change
Dr.
it to
Tammy.
JD. Yeah.
Yeah,
One
Dr.
of these
Tammy.
days. Yes, one of
Yeah,
these days
Dr. Tatum.
we're gonna call it into being, right? So
Yes, Dr.
with that
Tammy.
said, yes. So with that being said, that's part of who what I have, not who I am. I'm a child of God. That's who I am. But nonetheless, like I said, born and raised. I've got those credentials behind me. I've also got certificates in implicit bias training. I'm implicit bias training, grievance handler, you name it. I'm really about, and I always have been about education and social justice ever since I was a young person, and certainly since I've grown wiser. We won't say older. So that's just that's just a little bit about me and who I am. So
Well, Tammy, thank you for coming on the show.
thank you.
Let's get straight to it. Tammy, I know that you kind of talking to us about the position that you hold in the workforce.
Okay.
What the position that you do.
Basically what I do is protect civil and human rights. I've always been what you call an advocate for civil and human rights, but the current position that I hold, I'm a civil and human rights director. And so I not only advocate for, but I protect civil and human rights in the areas of fair housing, education, employment, disability, slash what we call public accommodations. And so this is what I do day in and day out, and it's not my job. It's it's my service and it's my pleasure.
All right. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you are struggling in any of these areas, now we got somebody who gonna come and defend us. So the cavalry ain't coming, ladies and gentlemen, because it's already here. It's up to us to save us. And so we're gonna get right into it. Kind of, Tammy, we talk about these things all the time. What is the main problem that you see in the housing market when it comes to generational wealth? Okay.
Right.
Kind of elaborate on that because I know that you see that a lot being the director in the position that you hold.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit. What is some of the challenges that you see and what it is in that area?
So, to make a long story short, basically the main problem would be us as people of color, and obviously we're not quote unquote leaving other people out, but with regards to people of color, we were locked out of what we call home ownership, which translated to generational wealth. And just to kind of give you a snapshot, basically of what that looks like, we'll just start at what we call Title 8 of the 1968 Civil and Human Rights, which that's known as the Fair Housing Act. And basically, that act was necessary to provide administrative and legal resources to address systemic housing discrimination. So basically, the government, with its policies and its practices, that it was implemented, back in what 1930 with the New Deal in that era. And basically these policies and practices, they enforced and encouraged segregation. And so, what is that? The FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, they also participated in what we call the redlining, which was the de-investment in neighborhoods of color. And so, we're talking, mortgages, we're talking, everything. The banks, denying, loans or any type of investment to be in certain communities, in particular communities of colors. And you can still see that evidence
Mhm.
today. And part of that strategy, you guys are in Indianapolis, and what is that down there by? What is that? The highway that runs down through downtown, that neighborhood downtown. Uh,
Riverside. Oh, wait.
Part of but it's coming through where not too far where Martin University is. Anthony, what is that? Anthony something
Anthony J.
Boulevard.
Brown. Yeah,
Yeah,
Anthony
Anthony
J.
J.
Brown.
Brown and all that. So that highway running through there, broke up. Basically, it was a line of segregation. So it kept, people of color on one side and other people on the other side. And so it was, the government invested in those areas where people of color were not. And so, when you have when you have laws and regulations and policies and procedures that literally block people from owning homes, owning lands, and things of that nature, you have nothing to pass down. So when you talk about generational wealth, if people of color were allowed to have land and allowed to have homes, then obviously those houses, they would go up in value. Land would go up in value. When people
Wow.
went to school, they could borrow money against real assets, real property. And when you don't have that, then it creates, poverty, basically. And so all of those, programs, from the New Deal, like I said, back in 1933, and the government had given out, I want to say, well, actually, we can even back it up. 1862, with President George Washington, that's when this land was found, and there was quote unquote found 2 billion acres of
Wow.
land that was given away,
Give
and
it.
it
Hold up. They
given.
didn't. Hold up. They didn't purchase it. Once again, she's educating us on Why? And it's not by coincidence that we have drugs in our community. It's not by coincidence or accident that we have poverty in our community, that we don't have access to capital in our community.
No.
These are the things that she's talking about that addresses the main problems in our community. Like for instance, this show. We're talking about generational wealth, but we would rather watch something else. But when it comes to capital, these are the places that we got to go to get a job.
Mhm.
Our kids go to the schools. She's telling us that redlining is a major problem, and we call it, today's term is regentrification. You know, that's the new deal today.
Mhm.
We want to go into the regentrification, but those are dog whistles for redlining. So
Absolutely.
keep going.
Yeah, so that was back in 1862 when there was 2 billion acres of free land given away
Wow.
to white people, not to anybody, else per se. And so when you take a look at that, I mean, how do you make up for that? How do you come up from that? And so yeah, so there's people, with regards to redlining and all that, like you're totally locked out of invested in home, invested in land, and anything. So as a people, um, we were locked out of that. And so they had to enact these laws and trying to even up the playing field, if you will. And so it's kind of like, what do you call those, not the market level, multi-level marketing, right?
Uh
So
huh.
the people at the very, very, very top, they typically make the most money because they were established. They have that foundation, right? The first one there. And so everybody that branches down from that, they make less and less money. So this whole thing about generational wealth, and where does that come from? If you were locked out for hundreds and hundreds of years of land ownership and housing, that explains the generational wealth. You had nothing to borrow other money against. You had nothing to pass down to your kids, right? You can pass a business down. I'm not technically, I guess you could pass debt down, but that's negative. So we talking about building legacies and things of that nature. You don't build legacies by passing down debt. But if I've got, a profitable business, let's say for instance, if I bought a house, say, 20 years ago, maybe that house was 100,000. Now that house is $500,000 or $600,000 now, right? So look how much equity that I would have. I could start other businesses. I could pay for my kids' college. So on and so forth. Start new, but all of those things you pass down. And so the last thing I want to say, housing plays a big part of this because housing discrimination has contributed. It's no if, and, buts, or maybes. It has contributed to the racial wealth gap because it denied people of color opportunities to build wealth within their community. Point
Wow.
blank, period.
Wow. So what she's saying is that, so as we begin to get into the discussion of generational wealth, she's hitting it right on the head. That's one of the reasons why we created the show, generational wealth, and that's the number one topic that we talk about is real estate, because other cultures understand that financial literacy and generational wealth is directly attached to real estate. As we just came out of the historic low interest rates. We don't understand the people who profited the most were hedge funds and people that bought out blocks and blocks and blocks. They wasn't buying them in the affluent communities. They was buying them right in our hood. So once again, we are the last to know and the last to act. So what is the economic impact that politics play in the housing market? What was it? Because you was bringing up the president, you was bringing up what redlining and policies. What does the economic impact that politics plays on it? What's
Well,
that all about?
the impact is straight poverty, and the impact is what I call special disfavor. So That's what, when you have policies and practices that literally, first of all, created this situation of locking people out of an opportunity to purchase land, an opportunity to buy land or houses or anything. Like, we, first of all, if we bag it all the way up, we were only considered three-fifths of a person. So
Well, I don't
technically,
know about. I'm not 3/5 of a man. I'm a
no,
100%.
but I said technically. I didn't say that it was right. I just said written in the Constitution. Tammy wasn't there when that was written, but I'm just saying what they said. We know that that was a lie, but that's what they said. So when you take a look at that, because someone's mindset, that's what's very important. So if I view you as less than a person, if I view you as less than a human, now that explains why then you were locked out of employment, you were locked out of housing, you were locked out of education, you were locked out of business. And then I used the media to paint the portrait of what I wanted the world to see of, you and others, and then of course we've got this healthcare piece, you're locked out of that, and criminal justice system. We won't even get into, that, but
Wow.
it comes around mindset. But at the end of the day, we can, call this impact many different names, but if we want to just keep it down to something simple, the impact is poverty. And it's poverty can go away. It's something that was created, so if you created it, you can make it go away. And then this thing called disfavor can be, bias, implicit bias, you can call it whatever, but it's just special. I call it disfavor, which is why, that's how we got locked out of, so many different things. So to me, that's what that the overall impact is, poverty. And so these laws, if you will, and that's why, a lot of people say, my voice doesn't count. It does.
Wow.
It does. And this is why it does. You know about these things called speeding tickets. You know about these things called, if you don't wear your seatbelt and you get caught and you get a ticket for not, people in Indiana Senate, people in Indiana House, people over there in Congress, be it the House side or the Senate side, they create the laws in which we live by. So if they create laws in which we live by, and we quote unquote have the power to pick and choose who we want to sit in those seats, we must exercise our votes to get the right people in there, in those seats, that will reflect laws that actually reflect how we think, feel, and believe, and what's best for not some people, but all people, right?
Wow.
So and if we think about it, if voting wasn't very important, why do people get killed over it?
Wow.
Why do people continue to get blocked out of a voting process by, restrictive requirements? you know uh, they don't want to do early voting, or they want to shorten the times and the days. They make voting hard. And who is that? Those politicians that want to remain in power, they make it hard for people to exercise their vote, because if you are allowed to do that, then you get to change what that looks like inside these chambers, that Indiana Senate chamber, be it the House side, and also over there in Congress. Like, if you vote, you exercise your right to vote, you make changes. You make changes that reflect what you need and want to see for all communities. So that's why voting is important. And I know it doesn't feel like it all the time, but I tell people, even at a minimum, even if you don't quote unquote vote in the presidential election, I think it's a good idea that you vote in your local election, because locally you can see the impact of your vote, you
Wow.
know?
Wow. So your vote do count. So
Absolutely.
you're not 3/4 of a man. You're not
No,
3/4 of a person.
no.
You're a whole person. You have a whole vote. And I know that that's a whole nother discussion for another day, talking
Yes.
about the electoral and the
Oh
general
gosh.
election.
Yes.
But once again, the cavalry is not coming, ladies and gentlemen. She's talking about Mrs. Dixon is talking about is that not only is redlining a problem, but she even mentioned that it impacts the way we go about living our life. What our value system is. Okay, because a lot of times, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Dixon, when you're trying to move up that ladder and you're trying to go into business for yourself and you don't have access to capital, you're almost competing with your hands behind your back, and
Yeah.
your competition is swinging, and we got to put our hands behind our back. And then when we do win, and we done ducked all the punches and we done figured it out, by the time we get there, we're exhausted, and we definitely don't want to bring nobody else,
Right.
you know,
Right.
to
Right.
bring
So
nobody else up. And then
yeah.
they criticize us for having a crab barrel effect when really it's not that I have a crab barrel effect. It's just that I have worked so hard to get here to where I just don't have enough to share.
Right.
you
So,
know,
right. So let me ask you this, because this is how this stuff ties together. So when you go apply for, say, a business loan, what's the first thing they want to know?
your race, your
Well,
race.
they shouldn't want to. If they say race, then you need to call Indiana Civil Rights Commission
So what
quick
was
fast. So one of the criteria is they want, because they want to know. That's just like if you borrow money from your cousin. Like, cousin would know when you gonna get, how you gonna give me my money back, right?
yeah, how
So
am I gonna get my money
when
back?
you go borrow money for a business, the bank wants to know. How am I gonna get my money back? And if you don't pay me, what do I get? That's where the house comes in. You go for a loan,
We ain't
you
gonna
may not have the money in your banking account per se, but if I put my home up as collateral, now I have an opportunity to get this business loan. But oh, if I don't have a house, what do I put up? This is how, again, this is why this housing thing is important. And you can't put a house up that you rent. You can put a house up that you buy in, or that's a house that you
hold
bought.
up, Mr. Tatum. I have people that say, I be in great discussions, great debates about people that says, well, you know what, renting is now as the interest rates have went up a little bit. They're not at no longer 2.5 or 3% or however low it was. And you know what, I just want to keep on renting, and I want to rent until the cows come home, and I want to rent until the sky turns purple, and I want to rent. I want to keep on renting. So, what do we say to people who are scared to take that challenge?
So what I tell them, that, obviously you got to have a roof over your head, and renting is good for now. It can help you, get things established if there's some credit or different things that need to be worked on. Renting is great for that. But but you need to move into home ownership for the very things that we're talking about. One, when you have a house that you're owning or that you own, if something happens, like, people get sick, right? You might be able to take a loan out against your house to, you don't want to, because it adds more debt too, but it still gives you an opportunity to borrow money against your home to take care of you or help send a grandchild to college. But you can't do that. And if you really think about it long term, somebody can break out their calculator, but let's just say your rent is $1,000, right? $1,000 a month. And because everything, what you say, inflation and everything, then made everybody's everything go up. So if you pay $1,000 a month, right, and you pay that every month, that's $12,000, right? So
Correct.
how long you plan on, renting? Like, are you planning on renting for, I don't know, let's say what, 20 years or something like that? Is that about 240 some $1,000? So you just bought, or no, you didn't buy, you rented. You rented $240,000 worth of whatever you got,
Oh,
versus you
you
bought
did.
$240,000. And against that $240,000, even if you don't want to borrow money against it, you can, pass that down to your grandkids or to your kids. And now they've got $240,000 that they can invest in something else if they choose to. So that's the difference between renting and owning. And, African Americans, we tend to rent more than we buy, which we understand how those things happen, but those things still keep us behind, because we have to, if it's not a house, we need a house, we need a business, we need something to own. We
Wow.
need something to
We
own
need that
because,
lemonade stand. We need a
yeah,
lemonade stand. We
yeah,
need.
all that. You
We
you
need.
got to own something, right?
Yeah. So once again, she's telling us, she's giving us the blueprint, ladies and gentlemen. You have to begin to own what we're at in our own community. At the beginning of the show, she gave her all of her credentials, right? We looked at them. Check this out. She's saying this is what she sees every day. We must begin to own things. The Calvary is not coming. The creek is rose. Start. We have to start betting on ourselves because guess what? Other people are. We talk about the other cultures coming in our community and buying it up, you know, and we're sitting right here saying that we don't have access. Well, guess what? A lot of times we might not have access because we're not utilizing the services and things that is available to us. And this is what she's saying. She said, yes, the deck is stacked against us. Okay, so what? The deck is stacked against us. Redlining. They don't redline in the suburban parts of Anderson or Indianapolis. They don't do that. FHA, why is that in place if there's no problems? If there's no redlining, why is there's no problem? It's not by accident that crime is in the inner city.
No.
It's not by accident.
Crime
People,
exists out of poverty,
yeah,
how is poverty created? So it's that kind of that circular piece going on. And if you really take out certain pieces, then you solve the problem. And it is, and like I said, if it's not a house, property, and it's called really collective community. That's so let's just say you and me and some of our families, some of our friends, let's say we collectively put our money together and went and bought a house. They have tax sales all the time. So maybe, collectively we go buy, a house, let's just say for a few $1,000s. And then everybody, puts in money to get this house, fixed up. And then we rent it out and then we can quote unquote flip it, go buy something else until we start owning. But we need to pull that together, that collectiveness, right?
wow, collective community. So now we're saying now she hit on a show. Now we might not be here too much longer, Tammy, because
Okay.
guess what? You're talking about something that we don't do in our community is that we don't trust us ourselves to network with one another to where we can put our resources together.
Well, let me get back to let me bring that we don't do that like we used to do it. And see,
Wow.
this is where, media and other things kind of, come into play. But we used to do that. And I'm gonna take it all the way back to, let's just go with after slavery. After slavery, we had to lean
The
on
Reconstruction
us.
period.
So we trusted. So it ain't like we ain't never did it. And then if we even go before slavery, because we were people before slavery. Who were we then? You know, kings, queens, whatever, attorneys, you name whoever, whatever we were before slavery. So it's not that we don't do those things and we haven't done those things. And no, 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 no. We used to, but slavery happened and slavery took away our culture, right? And it was part of our culture because we were tribal people. Tribal people is a collective community. So it
Wow.
ain't we ain't it's not like we ain't never did this. This is who we are. We need to get back to who we are. Tribal people, collective community. That's the same word. We just
Wow.
got to
So
remember that.
so you're saying so you're hitting something on the nail. We are not doing what we were used to do and
Exactly.
what we were created to do. So
Absolutely.
once again, I'm thinking that, when I was raised up, during the 60s and 70s, we had a lot of black pride in our community. We had, and I remember going down to certain relatives and friends of my mom's or friends of my we would share with one another.
Absolutely.
We would go get some sugar and their kids would come around us and we would all sit down and eat. We didn't know where it came from. We just knew that we were eating.
Eating.
And
Yes.
we wasn't in survival mode.
No.
So now you're bringing it to a head and saying, listen, we got to go back to what we used to do because a lot of that stuff that we did back in the day was healthy for us to do and propel us to what we have today. So,
Absolutely.
so,
Absolutely.
going back to the Calvary is not coming. The creek is rose. The levee is giving way. It's up to us to save us. We got to stop looking outside of our community and start looking internally. You're
Absolutely.
using your gift, your PhD to help defend.
Well, I don't have a PhD yet. I'm working on my
Oh,
JD.
man,
We got to
no,
fix
I'm
that.
calling you doctor. I'm just
Okay.
see. This is what happened when you bring us on our show.
Okay. Okay.
Take it over here.
Okay. We
So
got that. Okay. Got it.
yeah,
Honorary.
so
Here we
once
go.
again, if I want to bring doctors on my show, because
Okay.
when you become a doctor, don't now I'm gonna call you out. Now I'm gonna be like, hey, listen, this is Doctor. She came on my show, and then
Absolutely.
it saves the clip. And so I learned a couple months ago. One of the guys said one of the things that we do in technology, we got to use it to our benefit.
Yes.
And I never thought about this. He said every time you do a show, Cepeda, it is archived.
Hmm.
So your kids is going to be able to go back and look at this show and say, this is what Paw used to do.
Absolutely.
So now we're setting ourselves up for the collective community that I'm going to say, Mrs. Tatum, who won senator, was platformed on my show
Yes.
in Rag Capital Investing Group. So we ain't going to let you off the hook. We are
No, please
not going to
don't.
let you off the hook.
No,
So
please don't.
so once again, accountability, a collective community. We talking about accountability. We talked about redlining. We talked about home ownership. Do you see a disparity in home ownership where you're at? What are some of the disparities that you see?
There's disparities everywhere, and COVID was, that thing that brought it out and put it in, the world's view. And once COVID happened, you couldn't, deny what was, blatantly already there. And so, with regards to, what COVID brought out, with regards to the housing and stuff, well, there's a lot of, like you said, gentrification going on, and a lot of those outside investors. A lot of these investors, they're coming from outside of Indiana, and they're purchasing property, not only in Indianapolis, but Anderson, really just throughout Indiana, because Indiana is, cheap compared to property in New York or California or New Jersey, right? We have relatively cheap land and housing. So these investors, they're coming in, they're buying all this stuff up, and it's not so much, they see it as an investment property. They're not seeing it as, people live here. And I'm not knocking all of them, right? But there's quite a few that are coming in, and it's just, they're like, this is investment. I just really want to, do very minimum to it, flip it, get my money, and that's that. And so we have people, all kinds of people, living in substandard housing because it was only bought as an investment property and not truly that someone is caring about the people and the families that are living in these houses. And so, disparities are those with low income, right? So it's not,
Okay.
I'm not really talking about people of color here. No. Are they included? Absolutely. But so is everybody else. Anybody that is low income. And I don't care what your job is. And so, just like, in Anderson, there was some properties that might have been, let's say, $700 to rent. Now, with all this great inflation or not so great inflation, that same place is like $1,200. Well, how do you pay $1,200 in rent, and you work at McDonald's? And I'm not knocking nobody that work. When you work hard, you should be able to have housing and everything, that all your basic needs should be covered because you work hard. But what I'm saying is, if you're only making $7 or $8 an hour, and your rent alone is 1,200, you haven't bought food, you haven't bought you none of that. So the disparities is low income. So we got to get better paying jobs, what we call the livable wages, so people can live, they can buy houses, they can feed their families, they can clothe their families, they can have nice schools, because quote unquote, in America, if it's supposed to be, if you work hard, you're supposed to be able to live nice. So if you putting in 40, 60, 80, because that's what it takes. If you're only making minimum wage, you got to put in, I want to say 80, 90, 80 or 90 hours. How do you get, people get 80, 90 hours out of a week per se? to be able to pay the rent. So, the biggest disparity, along with other things, I think, is low income. We got to get income piece right.
Well, so once again, I was just looking at I was reading an article in the Indianapolis Star, and it was talking about Carmel, Indiana,
Hmm.
and that's up a little in the suburbs of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And they were doing some redevelopment up in Carmel, and I was making the comparison of when they're talking about doing redevelopment and businesses coming to Carmel and business and everything that comes to the inner city, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things, and I thought about this thought when, as I was reading the article, it talked about one of the stipulations for these businesses to come to Carmel. They said that they had to have jobs that was not minimum wage. They had to have at least $30 an hour job in order for them to come into redevelopment. And this might be a solution. In order for you to come into our community and tap into our resources, you have to have, you have to pay, you have to be paying out jobs that are at least 30 or 40,000, I mean, 30 or $40 an hour, rather than having people come into our communities and set up and they're paying us minimum wage or giving us a factory job that is way below what these high tech jobs are that's
Hmm.
in the suburbs. And it's not by coincidence that it's we used to have during slavery, we used to have these slave yards, which every all the slaves were, and then we had the house. And then we have that same thing going on today, which we gather around these corporations that have factory workers, rather than thinking that, hey, I work in a factory, right? But let me think how I can be an electrician. Let me think how I can be a chemist. Let me think how I can impact my community where I live, that will bring resources, hire more higher paying jobs instead of just settling for this job across the line. So once again, the other communities, they're doing it. If you go and look at Carmel and some of the affluent communities, they don't allow certain things to come in there. Okay.
Right. And I'm my grandma always says that, everything has a balance, right? So,
Yes.
we have to find that balance, because we know that every job is not $30 an hour. But however, those jobs that would qualify for that, let's make sure that that happens, right? But at the end of the day, making sure that there are livable wages. And one of the things that, people really don't talk too much about with regards to slavery is, I guess, the icing on the cake, if you will, about it, was that it was free labor.
Wow.
Free. So you have a whole nation and a whole economy basically built off of free labor. That's kind of part of capitalism too, but we're not going to go down that road. That's another discussion. However, what you're
Wow.
talking about with regards to, the low paying jobs, or what they would consider low skilled jobs, versus, high paying jobs, and high skill, high labor, high pay, whatever. But so when you look at those things, typically, if we even, go all the way back to right after slavery, again, people of color, and other races too, the Japanese, Chinese, all of them was also locked out of those high paying, high skill jobs. So not only did you have the housing problem, now when it comes to, types of employment wages, minority groups, specifically, they were typically in the unskilled, low paying jobs, and other, and in our the other culture was in, the high paying, high skill. So transfer to what you just said, Carmel is one of those affluent areas. In the affluent area, you have these quote unquote
Wow.
high skill, high paying jobs. You said bring it back down to the community. You got the low skill, low paying job. It's still a form of lockout, if you will. But again, let's find the balance. If it's, General Motors used to pay, 30 something dollars an hour. And then they got this bright idea about NAFTA, and moving overseas and paying everybody here like $10. And so now people on the assembly line could not even afford to buy the car that was coming off of the line, because quote unquote they wanted to save money, and that hurt them. But nonetheless, again, but those jobs, I say that to say that those jobs, they had the right pay. They had the right pay when they were paying them people 20, $30 an hour. It made sense, right? Because they could pay it, and the type of skill and work and labor that went behind it, it justified that pay rate. So that's what I mean by bringing a balance. If that type of work justifies that pay rate, then let's make sure that that happens. And then that's when we get to quote unquote the livable wages for everybody.
Wow. So she gave y'all a mouthful. The cavalry ain't coming, ladies and gentlemen. It's up to us to save us. We got to get behind it, and I want to make sure that we understand, Tammy, what you're saying here.
Hmm.
Not only is it important that we have home ownership, but we also must understand that it's important that we keep our homes,
Yes.
and that we do have the credit. Tammy, I hear this all the time being in the mortgage industry. I hear it on a daily basis. We don't have access to capital. You're telling us there's a reason why you don't have access to capital because you've never had any assets. And it's very difficult to have assets if you never have capital. Tammy, talk to us about, in your opinion, what is some of the things that we can do, basic steps that we can do to start addressing those issues that is so prevalent in our community in reference to home ownership, financial wealth, generational wealth. What are some of the things that we can do step by step to get us back on track?
Well, first of all, everything starts with, research and what I call research and education. So one of the, I guess, easiest things for people to do is to seek out shows like yours that talk
Yes.
about
Welcome to Black
generational.
Capital Investment Group. The cavalry ain't coming. The creek is rose. The levee is giving way. It's up to us to save us. Follow me, Google me, do it all.
Yeah.
Tammy,
Yeah.
and vote for Tammy. That's another thing that we can do. Vote for Tammy. We want if you. I don't want to hear about nobody complaining if y'all don't vote for Tammy. If y'all don't vote for her, you have no right to say nothing. I don't want to hear it because she's been on our show. She's given us the knowledge. We have to support. And all jokes aside, we have to support our people who are putting it on the line. Because guess what? Tammy didn't say it. I am. Guess what? When they put that in the law that we were 3/4 of a person, somebody had to vote on that.
Yes.
Somebody had to vote that in the law. Somebody had to put it in the law. It didn't come in the law by itself. Somebody had to say, this is what we are going to do, and this is our value system, and this is what we want to say, right?
Hmm.
So this is the things that we don't understand. Yes, I'm a supportive of having good things, Tammy. I'm a supportive. I like it, right? I like the Jay Z's and I celebrate the Michael Jacksons and the Kobe Bryants and the LeBron James and the Magic Johnsons and all of those peoples and the TD Jakes and all. And we have a lot of great entrepreneurs out here.
Yes, we
But
do.
why don't we trickle it back to where we give it back to our communities? Because I think Martin Luther King said it best. I can't be who I want to be until you are who you want to be because we all of the same fabric.
Right.
So there's no big eyes or little U's in our community if we all lose it.
Right. And so, so obviously, like I said, you got to do your research. You got to do your study, and studying, means that you pick up, books. And now with the internet, like stuff is easy. You don't even have to like physically
Audiobooks, I
go
do that all
into,
the time.
you
I
don't got
don't.
to physically go into a library or nothing. Like you can Google stuff, right?
Hey, you know what? You can download YouTube and you can put in Cepeda Jackson and
Yes,
all of my shows will come up and you'll have
definitely.
me on there talking about Tammy.
Yeah, yeah. So but research and that study. So studying, how to invest and finding seminars, be it free for right now or the ones that you pay for. But you need to start, studying, how to invest and why home and ownership is important, and really how to take care of the home. Because it's one thing once you get it, then you need to know how to take care of it. Because as you take care of it on the outside, and the inside, the value goes up. When the
Uh-huh.
value goes up, then you can use that to leverage, more home improvements, education, so on and so forth. So those are some of the things too. But like I talked to you before, that collective community piece, that having a code of ethics, if you will, and that, I am my brother's keeper. If we make that our code of ethics, when I say that I am my brother's keeper, what that means is that I'm going to collaborate because, again, we're all tribal people. We're going to collaborate with one another. We're going to build collective community with one another. We're going
Wow.
to build collective
Wow.
economics with one another. And these are things that we can pass down. So, and speaking about passing down and you saving all of these shows, that's knowledge. Knowledge translates to wealth passed down. So, beyond you, your kids, your grandkids, and so on and so forth, they can go back and listen to these things and develop a knowledge base and hopefully a thirst that will, keep them continually exercising their rights and ability to study,
Wow.
to connect, and to grow.
Say it.
Right. So that's what we need. So I mean, we can say one, two, and it really is easy as one, two, three, if we develop that code of ethics about all of us being a collective community. And what does that look like? And what it looks like, research tribal communities.
Wow.
You got somebody over farming, like we don't do that no more, right?
Wow.
You,
Well, you
you
know what? I remember growing up with my grandparents, they used to have a garden in the backyard. They would
oh
have
my God,
tomatoes, they would
both of
have
my grandparents
squash,
had that.
they would have
Yes,
tomatoes, they would have squash, they would have snap beans,
yes, yes.
lima beans. What else? They would have carrots. You know, we always got to have our carrots and
Mhm.
lettuce. You
Right.
know, we would have the lettuce right
And
there in
let
our
me
community.
ask you that: did your grandparents or did your parents, did they share
Yeah,
that
everybody had
that
access.
part?
You know what? I
That
remember.
part.
I remember my grandmother. We used to can things. She used to can
Absolutely. Yes.
things, and all the kids in the community. We would come over and we would eat. And when we had our little holiday, my grandmother and grandfather, they would get the cans out. Either it was peach cobbler that
Yeah. Don't say
everybody
that.
ate.
Don't you say no peach cobbler. Don't you do that.
Yeah, peach cobbler that everybody ate, or it was spaghetti that they would
Mhm.
do the tomatoes.
Yeah.
I don't know if we had. I don't know if y'all you remember back in the day when we used to have those fried green tomatoes.
Listen, I still eat fried green tomatoes to this day. I love fried pickles too. Like I
Yeah,
love
fried
all that
pickles,
stuff.
fried green tomatoes. So those are the things that I think that we miss out on because that's that generational wealth that we pass down. We
Yes.
would be more interested in going to a shop that is not traditional African American food. And we want to say when we go to, an African shop, we want to talk about the jerky meats and things of that nature. But true African American food is stuff that came out of my grandmother's backyard,
Absolutely.
which was the squash,
Hmm.
which was the zucchini, which
Yeah.
was the cucumbers,
Yeah.
which was the tomatoes.
All of those things, but see, and I think people miss the sometimes, well, these generations going forward, they missed out on that. And I don't know how we all got away from that, because those were some beautiful memories, right? But I think the biggest part of it that may have been overlooked is that, not only did it bring the family together, and we shared our resources, which was our food. So it didn't matter if you came in the door with something to eat or not. Like, sometimes you go to, barbecues and stuff, like, who bringing this and who, it didn't matter. Grandma didn't say you can't come unless you brought something to eat. Grandma said, come on. And
Yeah.
when you got there, whatever she had was yours. So even in that's the lesson. And then you saw grandma and the aunties and different ones, they was working together. Somebody was washing the greens and snapping the peas, that working together, right? That cohesiveness, right? So that's part of the lesson. And then, grandma might be sitting in the front room resting now because she done got everything going. She's sitting in the front room resting with the, smaller grandkids, and she's telling stories about, hey, when I grew up, this is what I did, this is what I went. That storytelling, that's education and knowledge in that, and we got away from that. So now when you go to these barbecues, it's what's on the grill, music playing and all that, and that's fine. I'm not knocking that, right? But the part that's missing, at some point you turn the music down or you turn that music off, and you sit down to have that meal, because most people don't even sit down at the family table anymore or on the floor or
Wow.
whatever to
Wow.
have
Wow.
meals. There was lessons and meaning behind sitting down at that table to have dinner together, because in those family meetings, if you will, again, not only were generational stories passed down, but this was a time for us to find out, what are you doing in your life? I'm into politics, or I'm into, mortgage. And oh, I got a friend that's, trying to get a house. Can you help my friend? So now we networking, right? So that you network in them family meetings to find out what somebody doing, how you can help them, what kind of resources do we have? What is it that we need? And all of those things are missing. And if we get back to, dinner at grandma's house, Sunday dinners at grandma's house, or, the new barbecues, but at these new barbecues, turn that music down for a minute, sit down with your family, find out who's doing what, who needs help, and let people come whether they got, food in their hands or
Okay.
not. Because
Okay.
we're going to get back to gardening so that we can feed not only our family, but feed the community. Let's get back to gardening and those things.
Well, so once again, Mrs. Dixon is telling us what we need to do. She's not only talking about it, she is about it. Okay? She's telling us. That's how I met her. I went to a wedding. She sat across from me. I
We
didn't really
start.
say too much. I was there enjoying the moment. She said, "Listen, you ain't gonna just sit here and be quiet." So now I was waiting for her to come on my show so I can get back at her. So she said, "You ain't gonna just sit here and be quiet." She didn't know that I had my Facebook Live and I was gonna get her on my
No
show.
idea.
Then in us talking, she said, "I'm running for office. I have a business. I love home ownership." But if I would have never talked to her, that sit across from me, she had a wealth of resources. Didn't know that putting our resources together, look at what we got.
Absolutely.
You know, we have resources right here in our community. That brings me to the next question, Tammy.
Yes.
What is some of the sites that you are familiar with that can help us if we're running into some serious problems when you're dealing with home ownership? What is some of the things that we can do to get some legal help or some practical help or resources that you send people to get some help if we need help in home ownership or anything like that?
Right. So if you would run that tag, and while you're running the tag, the Indiana Housing Community Development Agency is right there in Indianapolis, Indiana, and one of the programs under them is that Indiana Housing Now. The Indiana Housing Now basically is a rental assistance, especially for those people. And I say at this point, everybody was affected by COVID. So anybody that was affected by COVID and they need rental assistance, by all means, visit the indianahousingnow.org. They've got, financial resources to
Mhm.
help people get caught up on their rent. And also on that same page, they do have some sort of assistance for those who actually own their homes as well. Their main focus is rental assistance, but, they do have some home ownership assistance as well. And then the ICHDA, which is that, Indiana Housing Community Development Agency, they have partnered with Indiana Legal Service, and so they're doing some help with regards to helping people to like navigate some of those legal things. So say for instance, if you are in a house and been affected by COVID and you weren't able to pay for your rent and now you're facing eviction, you tapping into the IHCDA page. They'll have a link that'll lead you over to their Indiana Legal Help .org, and again, they can provide some assistance with navigating that legal system. Now, if you face discrimination within housing and things of that nature, you want to reach out. In Indianapolis is the Indiana Civil Rights Division. I didn't include that in the tag message that I sent over to
But
you, but it,
you guys can call her. Okay.
yes.
So once again, ladies and gentlemen, not only did we talk about what we need to do in our community, not only did we talk about what is some of the problems in our community, but I love this about the show. we have people that is coming up with solutions.
Yes.
A lot of times we want to sit around and always poor, woe is me, woe is me. Well, she just gave you some resources. If you have been behind on paying your rent because you didn't have a job during COVID, wink, wink, COVID is starting to, deal with, you ain't went back to work yet, give that agency a call. If you are a renter, if you need rental assistance, once again, give her a call. If you are a homeowner and you fell behind on your mortgage, which we all have done in past. So once again, you got some resources. Then she said, if you need some legal help, if you got some slumlords who don't want to work on your home, but they want to keep collecting rent. She said, I said it. She didn't have to say it. Give them a call. They can help you out. Okay. They can make them fix that pipe that's drawn all type of mold and mildew at your home. We can get that taken care of. And then she says, if you can't get into any of that, she's ready to run for office. I want y'all to get behind her now because Calvary ain't coming. The creek is rose, the levee is giving way. She started on my show. Remember, I'm going to promote her. And when she wins office, and we start calling her Dr. Tatum,
There it is.
we start calling her Dr. Tatum, then when she comes back, then I can get her to come back on my show. But see, we like to bet with the winners. For some reason, I think that we always say you got to win before we get behind you. And it really don't work like that.
No. Oh, no. We need help day one.
Yeah, we want to get behind her now. So when she do win, she can say, this is what helped me get to where I want to be. So we want to make sure that we're supporting one another. She's giving us the resources. Dr. Tamie Dixon Tatum, 765-278-6780. Now, brothers, I know we always ask for a young lady's number, but she put her number out there so that y'all can call to get legal help, right? In reference to home ownership. Ladies, if you're so embarrassed that where you fell behind and prideful, that's fine. Just give her a call, sister to sister, Dr. Tatum. Dr. Tatum, can I talk to you about helping me out getting into home ownership? We talked about the redlining. We talked about the discrimination. We talked about real estate. Real estate has to be the tool to get us propelled into generational wealth. If you are not a homeowner, you got to start owning something. You got to start somewhere. So I say start with the person that you're looking at. Bet on yourself. Put the mirror up. Look at yourself. The Calvary is not coming. The creek is rose. The levee is giving way. It's up to you to save you. Okay? Me and Tammy and the people that came on the show, guess what? We're going to be here for you. But you have to take advantage of what we have, what we're offering, what we're trying to do. You have to bet on yourself, right?
Yes.
Tammy.
Yes.
And you're in your office where you're at now, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about a whole lot tonight. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for taking out a piece of your day to come and be a part of this small group of individuals that is trying to do the best we have over in our little section, right?
Yes.
But you say you like some green tomatoes, right?
Yes, fried green.
Fried green tomatoes. Fried green tomatoes. So when you start cooking those up, you got my number. So
well, I sound like to eat them. I ain't sound like to cook them.
So we talked about the collective community now.
Yeah, that part.
Yeah,
I got you. I'm gonna hook it up. Then I'm gonna hook it up.
So we want to make sure we got that. But going back to the seriousness, we want to make sure that if you are looking to buy a home, right, and you feel like you're discriminated against, give Tammy a call so we can make sure that you are in the best position possible. We have some resources. Tammy has some resources. Come on the show, call us, inbox me if you feel like you've been redlined against. Tammy has some tools that she can send you to that can help you, right?
Yep.
Also, we want to make sure that the people understand what your solution to the problem was, okay? Mm-hmm. We want to make sure. One, you said, go back, start studying, start reading. Develop an appetite for reading, develop an appetite for studying, go back and start networking with people in your community that will give you an opportunity to have a win, right?
Hmm.
That's the three things that we need to do. It's not hard. We
Yeah.
have to start betting on ourselves. I bet on Tammy. Tammy betted on me. Tammy said, Cepeda, I'm going to come to your show. She vetted me now. She said that she put her sister to take a
Yes.
look at some what I did. But we want to make sure that we have quality when we do use one another
Yes.
services. We want to
Absolutely.
make sure that we are on time, that we don't embarrass one another. We want to make sure that we're doing our best. We're in the spirit of excellence, black excellence.
Yes.
So that's nothing wrong with that. The Calvary ain't coming. The creek has rose. The levee is giving way. Tammy is really, she laid a lot on us today. She made us want to do better, you know.
Right.
And so as Tammy is beginning to run for office, I'm challenging each and every person. Tammy, when you get ready to run for your office, if you need any help passing out flyers, coming back on the show, because, towards when you get closer to the time,
Hmm.
we want to make sure that we are supportive of what you're doing. So, can we have you come back on the show? And not going to talk about home
Absolutely.
ownership. We're going to talk about your campaign now. So
Okay.
Tammy is going to help us out to make sure that we have a seat at the table. And not
Absolutely.
just see, a lot of times when we get a seat at the table, Tammy, we feel like, hey, that's it. But no, that's really when the work starts. Because when
Absolutely.
you come up with these policies that start telling other people, quote unquote, that we're not three-fourths of a person, you got to have some backbone. You got to have some people standing behind you so that
Absolutely.
they can take you seriously. So we
Absolutely.
got our own, our pride, our own, our very best in Tammy.
Thank
We
you.
got somebody who's gonna fight for us. So
Absolutely.
so
I'm here to,
Tammy's
I
not gonna
am.
quit. So we thank you for coming onto the show. Any closing remarks, things that we should need to be paying attention to?
Absolutely, really, really quick. Definitely, like I said, read and study. Economics. But the biggest thing is developing that collective community. And if you want to give me a call, but also it's called African American Connection. I believe it's www African American Connection for us by us.com. That's a way to start helping to build collective community. And what that really means is in every other community, the dollar circulates 28 days, 27, 15. In the collective community for African American, our dollar circulates 6 hours, less than 6 hours, and we put $1 trillion into the U.S. economy. We need to build collective communities so that we can build collective wealth. So that's really all I have to say on it. And I'll leave you with a quote from Marcus Garvey. Basically, I'm going to summarize it. He said, take advantage of all opportunities. And when there is no way, we need to create one. So let's create collective communities so we can create collective wealth and generational wealth. So that's all I have.
Wow, Tammy, thank you for coming on to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are missing these shows, shame on you.
Shame on you.
Shame on you. If you are missing sharing these shows with your girlfriends, with your boyfriends, with your friends and family, people who you care about, shame on you. The Calvary is not coming, ladies and gentlemen. The creek has rose. The levee has given way. You don't no longer. We can no longer say that we don't have access. We have to start taking control of our own community. More so than that, you need to bet on yourself. Hey, listen. This is what we're doing. We're here at Mac Capital. We have a home ownership class next Saturday. Next Saturday. Home ownership. If you are tired of fighting with realtors and fighting with mortgage loan officers and just want to buy a home, call us next Saturday. It's next Saturday at 9,000 Keystone in the Crossing. We're going to be there. We're going to have a home ownership. This is from 2 to 4, home ownership. From 12 to 1, if you have had some credit issues, Tammy,
Yes.
it's we're opening up the doors. If you've had credit issues, we want you to come to 9,000 Keystone and the Crossing from 12 to 1. We're going to be talking about credit. We can go get you pre-approved right there on the spot. Okay. Now, one of the things that we do here, Tammy, in Indianapolis, I also have a networking event, which is free. Can you say
Okay.
free? Free.
Free. I like free.
Free, free, free. It's a networking with. If you have a business, want to go into business, want to get access to capital, want to meet some bankers, want to meet some people in the business that you might be in, want to get mentored, want to do whatever it is, come on out. It's free of charge. You can come out, bring your business cards. If you have a business, want to hire some quality people, come out and we'll show up. We're going to be there. Tammy won't be able to be there for Saturday because they're doing the Black Expo in
Kickoff in Anderson.
in
Yeah.
Anderson kickoff. And if Tammy's got to be there because she's running for office. So we want to make sure that if you're in the Anderson area, come out, come to Tammy's booth, come out, shake her hand. But more so than that, if you have watched this show and you're in Anderson and you come out to Tammy's thing, make sure that you follow her around and tell everybody in your community that she's running for office and that you guys are going to come out and vote for her on that day and let her know that. So we want to hold her accountable. So when she comes back, she bringing her green tomatoes, fried
Yes.
Cepeda, and she's gonna bring the green tomatoes for me on my show so that we can eat, so I can have some of that old school cooking.
Let me call my grandma.
Okay. So the Calvary is not coming, ladies and gentlemen. The creek is rose, the levee is giving way. It's up to us to save us. Tammy, thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for educating us. And more so than that, Tammy, thank you for being who you are, because you could have act like you didn't know me, and we would have never known that you knew how to do the fried green tomatoes that you're bringing on the potato show in a
Well,
couple of weeks.
well, I'm gonna say my grandma Zoma Sanders and Callie Bell Dixon, they taught me well. They said never meet a stranger, and by all means, when you at the dinner table, you better have some good conversation. So you wasn't gonna get away sitting across from me, and we that wasn't gonna happen.
All right, all right. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the show today. Once again, if you're trying to buy a house, give us a call. Next Thursday is network night. Next Saturday, the 21st, the 23rd, we're going to be at 9000 Keystone and the Crossing. And guess what? We're going to be there. We're going to be doing some credit education. We're going to be having people there on site. We're going to have some developers there, some builders there. If you're trying to buy a new construction, we got you. If you want to live on the west side, east side, north side, doesn't matter. We can get you in. More so than that, I'm a mortgage loan officer registered by the state of Indiana. I can help you get into a home. Once again, the Calvary is not coming, ladies and gentlemen. The creek is rose, the levee is giving way. Once again, we knocked it out of the park with Tammy. Tammy is killing it. We want to support her when she wins the election, okay? But more so than that, when she wins the election and
Yes,
when she becomes Dr. Tammy,
there it is.
that's more than the election. She's gonna become doctor. And when she comes doctor, then we're gonna invite her back on the show. And then we're gonna support her and we're gonna talk about her experience when she won the election. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, the Calvary ain't coming. The creek is rose, the levee is giving way. It's up to us to save us. And until next week, keep betting on yourself. Once again, thank you for coming on the show, Tammy. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye
Keep
bye.
studying and keep growing. All
All
right.
right then. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye bye.